10 Steps Further is a podcast designed to help you get 10 steps further along your spiritual journey. If you've been on your journey for 30 years or 30 minutes, if you believe in God, or even if you're not sure He exists, all we're trying to do is help you get 10 steps further. I'm Jonathan, and this is Jack, and we're just taking a walk. Why don't you join us? Welcome back to 10 Steps Further. We have, once again, the voice of all women with us. Has it been a while? I feel like we've done a few episodes in between your last episode.
Wow.
Okay, let's tell him. So the last episode we did with Lesley, Jonathan's computer completely bogged.
Yeah, multiple times.
Totally. So we just finished an episode.
Yeah.
We got to like 42 minutes and we hadn't ended it. Yeah. So if it sounds weird to you, the Gentleman's Podcast, go back and listen to the last 3 minutes.
Like everything changed.
Those are 3 weeks different.
Right.
In perspective.
Yeah. The reason why we have Lesley here today is because we're talking about control freak issues.
So here's what I found in our pre-conversation
that Jonathan has far greater issues.
I threw out this topic and I go, oh, Lesley says, man, I'm all in. I got all kinds of control issues, but I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see where this goes.
Jonathan, he may have you on this one. I don't know.
We'll see.
When he first started talking about his control issues, he was basically just talking about how great he was.
Yeah.
Explain
that.
Yeah.
Lesley, explain that. Yeah. Tell the listeners what you're talking about.
Well, he was like, I guess the only control issue I have is I want to be in control of myself. But it super helped me because I never got into any bad stuff.
Yeah.
I found my own path early. I knew exactly what I wanted and how to get it, and I just feel like it kept me on a really great straight path. I don't think I said most
of that stuff. I think most of that was interpreted by
I don't know, Jack. You were in here.
Well, you were telling us that there was a group of people whose goal was to get you lit.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. There were people. I mean, I was kind of a target throughout high school because I was known as the kid who didn't do anything. All I did was play basketball. That was my outlet, and then I would go to movies or something. But mainly like Friday night.
There's another name for that.
Everybody was drinking.
What is that?
Boring.
Yeah. It was not boring. It was awesome. It was so fun. I wouldn't trade that. The one thing that I wouldn't do differently is probably play basketball as much as I played. Like I would keep that piece. A lot of other stuff I would have done differently, but not that piece.
Yes. So we've kind of found, we'll explore this a little bit, that Jonathan is very sure of his own thoughts and opinion and path. And if there's something else, then he's not quite sure. He's not all in.
Right.
Right. Like not all in very quickly, if ever.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I make comments about my oldest son being like, he takes after me and my brothers. We kind of have these certain traits. But he is the one who I will he will say something and he will be so dogmatic about it. And I just know you are 100% wrong. and he just never he can't see it until it falls through. And I'm like, well, there you go, buddy. So yeah, he get that from me.
Okay. Are you, that's right. Because there are people that there are two ways to do things, right?
Yeah.
My way and the wrong way.
Yeah. I don't know that I go that way. So that's
right, we're going to get that.
While we talk about control.
Yeah, we're going to just explore you. This is going to be a therapy session.
Everyone else is going to tell us who's bigger control freak, Lesley or Jonathan.
Well, I am because I have to get us moving in the right direction.
Right. He's got an agenda.
A little bit of control.
I think
I've read this story to you guys before, but I'm going to read it again. At 3:30 p.m. on June 6, 2007, this really happened.
Okay.
You can go back and watch. In fact, I'll probably put it on the show notes. The actual news footage of this. All right? 21-year-old Ben Carpenter drove his electric-powered wheelchair down the sidewalk in Paw Paw, Michigan. He began to cross the street in his wheelchair. When the light turned green, somehow a semi-truck did not see Ben in his wheelchair. With Ben still in front of the truck, the engine roared to life. The truck pulled forward. When the truck struck Ben's wheelchair, the wheelchair turned, now facing forward, and the handles in the back of the wheelchair became wedged in the truck's grill. The wheelchair kept rolling and Ben, wearing a seatbelt, was held in his chair. The truck picked up speed, soon reaching 50 miles an hour. While the driver continued in his own little world of the truck cab, people along the road saw what was happening. Everyone seemed to see the drama unfolding, but the driver, finally, after 2 miles, the truck pulled into a trucking company parking lot, still clueless to the presence of Ben Carpenter, pinned to the front of his truck. Thankfully, Ben was unharmed.
That is insane. That's horrible.
There's no footage of it actually happening, which would have
Right.
been awesome.
No.
But
But there's
footage?
news
No, it wouldn't.
footage of him being interviewed and the truck
wow.
driver. Like
Wow.
like you don't want to be the truck driver in that interview.
Oh yeah.
No
Yeah.
way.
Oh, man. Thank God he's okay. I feel like a million things could have happened in that situation.
Could have, but they didn't. So
they
it was actually
didn't.
awesome, and
It
it made
was-
for a great story.
Okay, I think that story illustrates how people feel about putting God in control of their life. Like all of a sudden you start this relationship, and then you're just wedged to the front of the truck, right? You're stuck in the grill, and he's going to take you to places that you never wanted to go, and like your money, like he's
Right.
going to take all your money, and he's going to make you into a missionary. He's going to take
Right.
all the introverts and make them extroverts,
Right.
and all the extroverts and make them introverts, and it's just going to spin out of control. And I think there are a lot of people that, I don't know if you say this out loud, but I don't know. Do I want God to determine
Right.
my job or
Right.
my spouse, or is he going to be the main influencer?
Mm-hmm.
When this is Jonathan is the perfect example of this in this way.
Okay.
Because you were saying that at 14 years old,
Yeah.
your dad died,
Right.
and then within a couple months, your older brother left. You were the
Yeah.
oldest male.
Oldest male in the house. Yeah.
Right.
Man of the house. From like I'm just a kid doing life to
Yeah.
all of a sudden like, all right, you got 3 younger siblings, and your mom who's depressed.
Very depressed.
And so it's just like all of a sudden you got to make your own decisions, and you got to like I just feel like I grew up really fast. I actually had a conversation with my wife when we were in high school, and I remember saying, I feel like I'm 30 years old
Yeah.
in high school. Like I remember saying that. She's like, you and me are not in the same place. she was so not there.
She needed some time.
Yeah.
Something needed to happen for
Right.
you guys to ultimately end up together. But honestly, I deal with the same thing with my daughter
Yeah.
because she
Yeah.
lived in an orphanage.
Right.
And in an orphanage, there are very few rules. You
Yeah.
got to eat at this time. You can't talk. But basically, you're on your own.
Right.
So then bringing somebody into a home like ours,
Yeah.
where you can't just do whatever you want.
Right.
You have
Right.
parents and we have your best interest at heart.
Right.
But still, getting to buy into that,
Right.
Yeah.
it's the same, don't
Yeah.
you think?
Yeah.
Like you're running in this, you're doing life. You do
Yeah.
life however you want. I mean, essentially,
Yeah.
in our culture,
Right.
you just kind of do what you think is right in your own eyes.
Oh yeah, especially I mean, it's wild because a lot of people like you look at that orphanage situation, and in some ways, in an unhealthy environment, even I mean, it's as good as they can offer them down there.
Right.
There's good people trying to help with orphanages, but in some ways, you're forced to kind of grow up early, and then if you do get adopted. Now you've got to go backwards. So you're basically learning childhood after you learned adulthood
Yeah.
in so many ways. And I promise that would be really hard for me right now to go back to, okay, here's your parents, and you're gonna follow their rules and do their thing. That would be really difficult.
Well, don't you think that's the issue with most people who are developing this relationship with God?
Absolutely.
You made all the calls.
Yeah.
You made all
Yeah.
the decisions. You got to do whatever you wanted with
Yep.
your money and your
Yep.
life and your time and
Yep.
what you watched. And the only thing you had to kind of worry about is like if your spouse is going to check on your search history.
Right.
And you could cover your tracks, but you could kind of do whatever you wanted. And now
Yeah.
you are in this relationship with this guy that I mean, come on, man. He wants his fingers on everything.
Right.
Yeah. I think that happens for people. I always say, like, there's so many great things about getting married young because there was so much I, like, hadn't
Yeah.
established that it was
Yep.
just like, it's Matt and me. Like, we're in
Yep.
it together. But I think that's true even, and it's a smaller scale compared to what God calls us to. But when people are older and they've already had jobs and they've already been out on their own, they've already been working, they have their own apartment, and then they get married, and then you're supposed to somehow figure out how the two of you become one. And there's like control issues that happen there of like, well, I always did this with my money and I did this, and maybe your spouse can't really understand why you did something the way you did it, or I like to have the kitchen clean before I go to bed. No, you want to have it clean first thing, like when you wake up in the morning.
Right,
and
right.
there's so many things that you have to give and take in a marriage when two become one, and when you
Right.
decide you're going to do that, and it's an even greater
Sure.
call when you're
Yeah.
Well,
really submitting to
my goal of this podcast is to expose Jonathan's control issues. So tell
I'm
the
all for
story of when you were 19,
Yeah.
you'd moved away,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
you
yeah.
came back.
Yeah, so I had lived. So I graduated. My mom asked me when I graduated what I wanted for a graduation present. I said I want a plane ticket anywhere, but hopefully California. So I moved to California. She got me a plane ticket. I moved to California, lived in California for a handful of months, and then I moved to Maine, lived there for a few months. So in total, I was gone for a year. Came back to Spokane, and my mom let me stay there. So I stayed up. I went to my mom's, and then I was 19 at this point. And I just remember one night I came in late. It was very, very late, like 4 a.m. late.
you were up
Not
late
dr-
with Sandy.
And
Not drinking or anything. No,
Not
no, no. I
drinking.
was just out. I was probably with a church group.
Right.
That was what I had been doing for the whole year.
Right.
And
See, you're right, Leslie.
Yeah.
He
All
was up
these
late with
stories make
Sandy.
him sound
I know,
really
make
good.
him sound good, right?
yeah.
Right.
So
This one won't, though.
yeah. So I remember walking in the house, and my mom is like waiting up for me, and she made a comment about like, "You're not coming in at this hour if you're staying here." And I said, "I'll have a place to live tomorrow," and I moved out. Like I was like I'm like I had lived a year making my own schedule, and I'm like I just can't.
You
I
have
can't
to
do
say
that.
something, Leslie, because only the people watching the video will know the shocked look that you just gave
I
Jonathan.
just feel like your poor mom.
Oh, absolutely. My mom, and she didn't
Like
just
she
deal
had
with it
such
with me.
good intentions. She was like, I just was worried about you. I
Yeah.
just wanted to know you were
Yeah.
home safe. And then you respond by being like, I'm out.
Yeah. Well, but what's funny is like she actually, I think that was a better solution for her. Like
Sure.
she was more worried about me knowing that I'm coming in at 4 than not knowing.
Yeah, maybe.
And so,
Well, so
Yeah.
I threw this topic out. Leslie says, "Yeah, man, I'm a control freak. I definitely have some issues." And
Right.
I
Jonathan,
didn't say
you
I was
know,
a control freak. You guys have both said I was a control freak
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
I didn't say I was a control freak. I just said,
Well, we're
yeah.
going to find out right now.
we
right
go.
now.
Here we go.
If you are listening, Psychology Today has an article entitled 7 Signs of a
Okay.
Control Freak.
Right.
So I'm going to read them, and you have to tell me where you rank. And if you're listening in your car or at home, rank yourself and be honest.
Right.
Okay? Number 1, you aren't a good team player. Joining a team means you have to give up some control, and you don't want to do that. Okay?
oh, that's no problem. I love team stuff.
Yeah, that's definitely a Leslie.
So no-
Jonathan?
Yeah, I'm on the struggle side of that, but I wouldn't say I'm terrible. I mean, I think I'm a good team player, but I don't feel like I'm a great team player. It's like
You're a good team player as long as they do it your way, you mean?
no, like yeah, no, like I don't feel. So here's how I feel. Let me give my emotional response to that. I feel like I don't contribute as much when it's collective because I have done so much on my own. I feel like I could probably do more if I like had a bigger part on the team. You know,
Right.
like that's the battle.
You're happier when you get to make all the decisions.
No. I don't think so.
Or, well, you've told me. You
Yeah.
said I either like to be in a place where,
I'm either on the stage or in the corner.
yeah, there's
it's-
like no halfway.
Yeah. So I try to be like, I'm also though, like Sandy and I both early on when we would be part of ministries and stuff, it was just like we're also very aware of what we would need if we were in the leadership spot.
Right.
So it's like, okay, set up chairs, come early and that kind of stuff. But yeah, but I still wrestle. I still wrestle
Okay.
with. But if we did it this way,
Right. All right. That's number one. This
Yeah.
is rapidly becoming all about Jonathan.
this is going to become. Yeah,
I'm going to want counselor fees after this.
yeah. That's just
Number
how we
two,
do it.
you believe you are 100% responsible for your success. They often say things like failure isn't an option, and they're overly critical of themselves.
I'm definitely overly critical. I don't fully believe I'm 100% in control of my success because I am super collaborative, and so I do.
Yeah.
I do feel like that it's not all me or nothing, and I think that successes and losses can be shared as a team because I am super collaborative.
Right.
But I am definitely self-critical.
What I will do is if something goes well, I will go, wow, man, God, you really stepped up and you did great. If something goes poorly, I blame myself.
Yeah,
And I know that that isn't what God has intended.
right.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like I'm that way. I feel like just exactly what you said, like the same thing. If it goes well, I feel like, yes, I didn't do it. I didn't have the skill set.
Right.
But if it goes bad, I'm like, what could I have done
Yeah.
to make it go better?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we both rank in that. All right. Number three, you invest a lot of time into trying to convince other people to change. I don't know. I'm pretty. A lot of times, we had a discussion yesterday at staff, and I'm pretty sure of my own opinion.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't know if did you think I was trying to convince people to change in our discussion yesterday?
No, but I think
No.
you were definitely wanting to make sure that people knew exactly your opinion.
Yeah.
So you're not just like, well, hey, this is how I feel, but let's have a discussion. You were like, this is how I feel. Da 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 da.
Right.
Right.
Right. And
Very
it kind of
certain of
goes
your
without
opinion.
saying that you're a little bit of a schmuck if you don't believe it. Right.
Yeah.
Did you? Is that what you wanted to say, Leslie? But
No,
you
I
couldn't
just wanted to
because I'm
say-
your boss.
No, you were definitely very certain of where you stood, and you were not. It wasn't like we can't debate this, but just so you know, I'm not changing how I feel.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I feel like I don't get too caught up in other people changing. Like, yeah, that would be the area of control that I don't feel like controlling other people is.
So one thing I know
the
that
thing.
has happened in our house is that I think that a certain way is the best way to do something, and so
And you're right.
in my head I'm right. In my head
you
I'm
probably
right.
are right. No, it's good.
But there's times that Matt the end goal will be the same thing, but he'll want to do it in a different way. And it's hard for me to think that his way could be equal or better. I assume that the way that I would do it. So that's not in everything. I'm very much like, this person's really good at this. Let me do it the way that they do it. Or this person has a really great heart for this. I'm going to follow after them. But within the household management stuff, it's hard for me to.
What about this though? Does it just because it's a different way? Like, it doesn't have to be as good, or it doesn't have to be better, right? It really doesn't have to be like that's. I feel like one of the things that we can let things go a little bit is like, okay, somebody has a different opinion. It might not be as good, so is it?
Right.
It's better than nothing.
Well,
It
Right.
might like that. So that's
that's where giving yourself up and sacrifice and servanthood
Yeah.
is even allowing somebody who's it might not be their way of doing it may be
Right.
worse.
yeah, yeah.
But that's
Like
hard.
having Talia do the dishes.
Right.
Like I think she washes 3 or 4 dishes and then she's gone. Like,
Dude, my kids we just wash the dishes, put them in the dishwasher, but it looks like they're throwing them from distance.
Right.
It looks like it's
Yeah.
like 2 feet away and they're chucking them in
we
there.
we were given this set of dishes by Blake and Linnea, who are part of our church. Apparently they had them for like 15 years or some stupid number, and then they got new dishes and they gave us all these little green bowls and plates and stuff, and they're nice. The amount of we've had them for like 2 months. The amount of chipped dishes we have, like they were in perfect condition.
I bet you
right.
their kids didn't use them. It was just the two of them.
Yeah,
And
probably.
They
I
probably
was
had
like,
plastic
probably
ones
true.
for the
This
kids.
is insane.
Okay, here's number 4. You have trouble maintaining meaningful relationships. No one ever says, you know what I like about her? She's a control freak.
Yeah, you guys have called me a control freak, and that one is not
'cause you
true
said
about
her.
me.
Okay,
Yeah.
I don't think that's true of either of you guys either.
No.
You spend a lot of energy trying to prevent bad things from happening. Rather than prepare themselves for the storm, control freaks try to prevent the storm from coming.
Guilty.
That's good. Okay, number 6, you don't delegate. A control freak firmly believes if you want something done right, you better do it yourself.
Yeah.
Most of my non-delegation is because I feel bad asking for people. We were talking about that.
Before the podcast, Lesley and I were talking about that because it really is like I absolutely want to delegate. I just feel like, well, if I don't want to do it, nobody wants to do it.
Right. Gotcha. Yeah.
So, but it isn't. It's not. Most of the time, it's not. I feel like a control issue.
Right.
That was the thing before we started the church. They said you're gonna have the biggest struggle is delegating,
Yeah.
and it turned
You
out
do well with that.
I know,
it's
but
been 21 years.
Right.
Yeah.
They
Didn't
were right.
I say that? I'm like, I feel like there's a lot of pastors who are really great about doing that. So.
They're right. It's
We had
taken a while.
We had a guy. Our church blew up. Well, I was at a church in a good way. Blew up. We had this guy come in, and he got hired to do a lot of stuff. A small church. He got hired. He was running the youth ministry. He was a associate pastor. He was doing everything, and he kind of took some of the roles that I had been doing, and he did them so much better. And and probably like 6 months in, I'm looking at it. I'm like, you know what he's doing? Not his job. He has people doing everything he's hired to do. Like every part of his job was covered by other people.
Right.
Like the youth ministry, he's just checking in on the 5 guys he's got rotating as the leaders. And
man.
like Chad's really good at that kind of thing.
Right.
It was
Yeah.
so amazing. I was like, I got to learn that
I
skill.
know.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Lastly, you lack compassion for people who make mistakes. They view mistakes as a sign of laziness or stupidity, and they think everyone should succeed.
No.
I don't think that's.
See,
I
I'm
don't
not a control
feel
freak.
that.
There's only like 3.
You're right.
Yeah.
No, I agree.
That I
I
have a
agree.
Control
relationship.
issues. So let's just.
Right. Right. Just a
Okay,
few
let me ask you
control
this though:
issues.
Are there things that happen where you're with your spouse and somebody will do something and you'll just give them a look? You'll give your spouse a look like, "Oh my gosh, that was the dumbest thing."
Oh man, people in this day and age, there are people that are just not smart.
Yeah, you don't want to be a sports announcer near my wife and I. But
Oh,
we'll just
wow.
tell you that we'll take
Yeah.
everyone down. Okay, so how'd you do? 1 out of 7? I don't know. Now, here's what I think: the problem most of us have with following God is a control issue because whatever it is, we want to call the shots, and maybe it's not everything.
Right.
Like I know people are all in. Help me with my parenting.
Yeah.
I need that. I need grace and I need the forgiveness part. That's
Okay.
great. But
Right.
I'm going to reserve the right to make all the calls in my own work. Or I'm going to reserve the right to just decide where my money goes.
Right.
And
Right.
those are essentially control issues.
Yeah. Yeah. I think. Yeah. So you're looking at kind of obedience,
Right.
Following God, like an obedient heart is no, he doesn't have that authority.
Right.
That kind of.
Right. Yeah.
I think for me, like the unknown. So like if you're in that season of like waiting, or if you have a child that's going through something and you can't quite figure out how to like help them or resolve the issue or whatever it is, or if there's like an issue within your marriage and you haven't gotten out to the other side yet, I think the unknown and the waiting is so hard and it's so anxiety producing for me that is when I feel like there's so many more control things that like pop in, because it's hard to just wait. And so then I go to this place of, well, I got to fix it. I need to figure out how to come up with a solution so I don't have this uneasy, yucky, anxious feeling inside of me. And that's when I like really try to control things so that I can try to control. Ultimately, I'm trying to control my emotions and how I feel, but it comes out as trying to control all of the other things in my environment because it makes me feel.
Right.
Well, you want to do, like, I feel like you want to do what you can. Like, you want to be proactive in the situation. Like, okay, things aren't financially where I need them to be. And then you go to church and the pastor is telling you about how we need to be generous and giving our money away. And it just seems like it's upside down to what our situation is. And so it's like, okay, God, if you make me rich, then I'll give to you. And that's a lot of people's mindset is like, okay, you do your part first, and then I'll do my part. And so I think that you deal with that kind of stuff, or relationship issues, and what the culture says about relationship, and many people who are engaging in relationship the way the world says to do relationship are experiencing pleasures from that. And then they're going into a Christian environment where some guy's on a stage telling them, "Hey, that's not gonna work out well for you."
Right.
And so I think that there's so much.
It sounds a little bit like you're talking about the difference between, it's kind of an impulse control thing. Like I can wait. If I put my head down, I keep going, it will ultimately pay off. But that's generally not what people want. They want instant gratification.
Yeah,
they want
absolutely.
it now. And God's not plan for your life isn't that every day instantly you'll be gratified in all of these things.
Right.
But if you put your head down, if you follow him, if you do the work or continue the relationship, then ultimately it'll all end up paying off.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, what I heard you saying, Lesley, is when something's not coming quick enough, that I want to fill it. I want to figure it out in the meantime. But life happens in the waiting.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You got 3 kids.
Yeah.
You don't know how they're going to turn out.
Right.
You're not going to know for 30 years.
And I know this. I was thinking about this earlier when you were talking about your childhood, and it made me think about it. There's like lots of things that my parents, like rules or whatever, that we had as a kid growing up. And like, for example, one thing that was like very well established, it was never even like I would have asked for it because I knew it would never be an option, is my parents were like, you won't live with a boyfriend or fiance or whatever before you're married.
Right.
And so I never really like pushed back on that because I was like, this is just a really hard boundary, so it's probably not going to happen. I guess maybe I was sort of a rule follower in that sense. But, I don't know that I like fully understood it necessarily at the time. And so many of my friends lived with their, now husbands or ex-boyfriends or whatever before they were married. But the funny thing is I didn't understand it when I was in high school and my parents started talking to me about it. I didn't understand when I was in college and I had to make the choice of whether I move back to San Diego for the year that I'm engaged with Matt, or I live with Matt's parents in Chicago the year I'm engaged with Matt, because living with him wasn't going to be a choice. I didn't necessarily totally understand it then either, but that's like a lot of years that I didn't really understand it. And now I can see my parents cared so much for me to make that happen and for that to be a boundary and an expectation within our family. And so that's like such a small scale, I think, of like God's being good for us, like God is for us. And so it's the hard thing for me is that now that I'm an adult and I feel like, not all the time, but some of the time I know like what I think is going to be best for my family. It's hard to know that, yes, your Heavenly Father is for you. And so even though you don't understand or you can't see some of the things that are happening and the reasons that they're happening, He's still ultimately for you. And so how do you just try not to control and just submit to whatever He's calling you to do in that moment?
Right.
And as a kid, for me, growing up with like a secure attachment and 2 parents and in a Christian home, I feel like I kind of was set up for that, and it's still hard for me. Like it was set up like we want the best for you, and so these are the things that we're setting in place, and we expect that you follow through with those. And now as an adult, it's still hard for me to figure that out, and I can see it in my past that it was beneficial.
It's really difficult to give up control, especially if you don't know that person has your best interest at heart.
Right.
That's the whole issue.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Does God or does He not have your best interest at heart when He says, do this, live like this, what have you?
Right.
And we still kind of live on this ragged edge of, I don't want to give this up.
Well, and the hard part too is like sometimes the evidence is not seen even in this life. Like that's the thing. Like there, oftentimes it is. But how many people throughout all of history, it's like, hey, yeah, they followed God and were killed for it. Like,
that's true.
That didn't work out for them. Like, like I just think of like the Apostle Paul, and he's got prophets telling him, if you go into that city, you're going to be arrested and beaten. And he said, that's not stopping me from going. He's like, I'm ready not only to be arrested and beaten, but to die.
Right.
And ultimately, that's what happened. And so, like, recognizing God has our best interest in mind, but that doesn't necessarily mean like health and wealth and
Right.
good times.
Comfy and cozy.
Yeah.
Well, so let's, it's been a while since we made it about Jonathan in this podcast.
I took a break.
So let's
bring it back to Jonathan.
Let's get back to that, okay?
All right.
So
My
part
counseling
of what I see in you is a really firm understanding of who God is in your life. And we're not going to bump you off of that. You're not going to be bumped off, even if it's a difficult thing or a hard thing.
Yeah.
Just like Paul says, hey, I'm going. I can see that in you.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
I can also see that as the leader of this organization, that if Jonathan's not really all in, that takes a lot of extra time of me explaining, okay, hey, here's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
But there is like Paul had some of that spiritual inside of him.
Yeah.
You're not going to bump me. You're not going to keep me from doing what I really believe. And I see that in you.
Right.
Well,
I would say.
I feel like you say all the time, like, nothing really surprises me. I feel like if you got a bad diagnosis or something happened, like you just would be like, oh, okay, well, I'm sure there's a purpose for this.
Yeah. So in that sense, I live braced, always braced. I mean, I've been hit too many. Like I've been shocked. And it happened a lot, and it happened young. So anymore, it's like, nah, Jack's probably a serial killer. I wouldn't.
I don't know how we ended up there.
Wouldn't surprise me.
Him.
Like somebody was just like, "Did you hear Jack got arrested for killing people every Friday night?" Yeah, sounds about right.
Would you be surprised if I was a serial killer?
No, I wouldn't.
I'd
be surprised, but I'd be like, meh. Yeah, I mean, it's just, and that's obviously extreme examples, but I would say here's the negative side for me so when I look at that, feeling like control issues and following God and being determined to follow Him well, and you said it has a lot to do with believing that the person leading us has our best interest in mind. The only person I'm confident who has my best interest in mind is God.
Right.
Like that. So my issue is not necessarily as much control issues as trust issues. And so like that's where, like I've told my wife, like there are times where in worship, I don't want you next to me because I know He gives me grace where you don't. Like we've had that conversation. So like just recognizing, that's the issue right there. It's just like, I don't know that I can trust everybody. I know I can trust Him. Always been good, always been faithful.
Yeah,
I feel like a lot of people have the opposite.
I don't want to limit it to just that one issue. I think you have there's lots more. We're going to ferret those out.
Yeah, slowly. Keep listening. 10 steps further every Tuesday.
Okay, so when I gave this message on control, there was one character in the Bible who has all kinds of control issues, right? And his name's Gideon.
Yeah, one of my favorites.
So we're just going to go through this. We'll probably have to go through it quick because we're running out of time. But so there's all kinds of trouble in Israel, and they're looking for these judges to kind of stand up and make a difference. And Gideon's one of those guys.
Yeah.
Like he completely leaked confidence every step of the way.
Yeah.
So there's all kinds of terror happening all around him. This is where we find him. The angel of the Lord came and sat down under the oak that belonged to Joash, where Gideon was threshing wheat in a wine press to keep him from the Midianites. Okay. You know what a wine press is? You guys ever see the I Love Lucy episode where she's stomping on grapes?
No.
Okay. So it's this big, giant barrel with these really tall sides.
Yeah.
So the wine wouldn't go out.
Okay.
Right. And people would actually stomp on these with their feet.
Right.
And that's how you made wine.
Right.
So he is literally threshing wheat, but he doesn't want anybody to see him. He's hiding in a wine press.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So you don't have to be fearless. He's clearly not fearless.
Right.
And this is how God greets him. Angel of the Lord appeared to Gideon. He said, "The Lord's with you, mighty warrior."
And then roughly translated, he responds like, "You got the wrong guy."
Oh, yeah, exactly.
I'm hiding.
This is what he says. "Sir, if the Lord's with us, why does all this happen?" But Read that again. The Lord's with us. Why is all this happening to us? That
Like-
seems to be the right interpretation.
Played by Mark Hamill in 1976.
Right. Where are all the wonders? Didn't the Lord bring us out of Egypt? But now the Lord has abandoned us, put us in the land of Midian.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
This is the guy who God chose.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
He chooses him. He's hiding in a wine press, and then he's whiny. And so then the Lord turned to him and says, I love this. Go in the strength you have and save Israel out of Midian's hand. Am I not sending you?
Right.
What does that mean? Go in the strength you have.
Oh man. Well, I just love how wimpy the guy is. Like I don't know. I mean, so many thoughts. Strength made perfect in weakness.
Yeah.
I mean, he picked
How much strength did he have?
none.
Almost none.
Yeah, enough apparently to kind of go, but it's you read the story, it's like he has to be kind of coerced at every intersection.
Single moment.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
What would you there are people out listening
Yeah.
who are wandering through,
Yeah.
you're on the verge of divorce or things aren't working out in your family, or, Lesley, you understand the fear that you have with your children. That's probably where control comes more than anything, because we want to control our kids' lives so that everything works in their favor.
Right.
And you can't.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You just have to keep getting up, and how much strength do I have?
Yeah.
Not much.
Right.
And I'll tell you, 21 years pastoring, go in the strength that you have.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's like,
Yeah.
wow, again, I'm going to stand up,
Yeah.
I'm going to get up, I'm going to speak again, I'm going to face this person that's telling me that they want to leave, all these things.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
all he tells us to do. And what he's trying to say is the strength you have is enough,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So then, okay, I got a couple of quotes. I think what I'm trying to say is you don't have to have a complete sense of security to give up control,
Yeah.
right? Because we'll never get to that spot.
Yeah. Well, and even like, I mean, if we're kind of making it practical and that go in the strength you have, like so often I feel like a lot of people won't take a step to give up control or to obey and to do something they feel like God's calling them to do because the step's too big.
Right.
It's like, I don't have the kind of faith that can walk on water. Well, take a step. Take a step. You don't have to give all your money away.
Right.
But maybe you can take $1 and give it to somebody who needs $1.
See.
I feel like too, if you could actually identify what your emotional response is of why you're doing the things that you're doing, like, am I operating out of fear? Am I operating out of like anxiety or worry? And if you can identify that as the reason why you're doing something, then that's probably the cause of you wanting to try to gain control over things. So if you just recognize, like, I'm feeling super fearful, and then your prayer can be, help me to relinquish some of this fear. Or if you're feeling super full of anxiety, like, if you can recognize what the emotion is, because sometimes I think that they're like, you don't recognize that they're so connected, at least for me. Like, I feel like that there's so much fear or anxiety, and that's why I'm doing something, the reason why I'm doing it, why I feel like I'm trying to control it. And I don't necessarily notice that I'm controlling it because I can only recognize the emotion. Like, I can only recognize the feeling inside of me.
I'm having to make this total shift in my life from I'm going to trust in me.
Right.
And only in me and my decisions, because I'm the one that knows and has my best interest at heart. And yet I know what a failure I am. I know I don't have enough strength. I know that I'm weak.
Yeah.
And I'm not alone. Okay, quote, right? Maxwell Martz, author of Psycho-Cybernetics,
Believe
estimates.
it or not, I've read it.
Have you really?
Yeah.
He estimates
Twice.
that 95% of people in our society have a strong sense of inadequacy.
Yeah.
Now, he just made up that quote. He just says that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's some truth to that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, control.
Well, certainly in one area. Nobody feels like they're adequate in every area of your life, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But we have this guy who's adequate in
Yeah.
every area. I mean, that's what he's claiming.
Right.
And not only does he know everything. He knows how the story ends for you and your kids and what will best benefit you and what will grow your character. But man, taking that jump into his lap and saying, I'm just going to trust you and put you in complete control, it's still hard.
Yeah. Yeah. For some reason, I'm thinking about that Gideon story. I've never really pictured it this way before, but it's really kind of cool. So this angel comes to Gideon while he's hiding, and he calls him a mighty man of valor who's going to deliver the Midianites. And then Gideon whines.
Right.
And then he says, go in the strength of yours. It's as if you could take out the whining. He ignored the whining.
Right.
Like if you took all of that out. And so I just love that.
Do you know his response after that?
What is it?
Here you go. After that, go in the strength you have.
Yeah.
But Lord, Gideon asked, how can I save Israel? My clan is the weakest in Manasseh. I'm the least in my family.
Yeah.
And the Lord answered, I'll be with you.
Yeah.
I'll strike down all the Midianites together.
Yeah.
If now I have found favor in your, Gideon says, if I have found favor in your eyes, give me a sign. So then he asks for a sign, and he has to put it out on the ground.
Yeah,
Right? Then he
twice.
gets the sign. He has to get the sign twice.
Yeah, he's got to get the reverse of the same. And
Right, yeah. So do you remember how it all ends?
like the whole...
The big story.
The soldiers fight against each other.
Well, yeah, so
you're
he has 30,000, and he's
Right.
going up against over 100,000.
Yeah.
And then God says, okay, go
Too
to
many.
the river. Here's what I want you to do. Go to the river and watch how guys drink.
Right.
And if guys put their hand, they cup their hands and drink, then keep them.
Yeah.
If they put their face in the water, drink like dogs,
Right. Yeah.
send them home.
Yeah.
It's just weird. Who would drink like that?
I won't think who would drink like that.
Thirsty people.
Apparently,
Yeah.
every Israelite.
Yeah.
Because there's only 300 guys that pick up the water.
Well, because
and
even
drink with their
before that,
hands.
he's just like, first of all, if anybody's scared, tell them to go home.
right.
And then he just lost most of his guys. Right
I think Gideon's going, like, does that count
I
for
go?
me? Can I go? Does that count for me?
Yeah.
And then
So 300.
300 against over 100,000.
Yeah.
And basically what happens is, don't they go up with these lamps inside of a pot?
Yeah.
And then they all get in the middle of this camp.
They circle it.
They circle it,
They
and then
break
they
the pot.
break the pots.
Yeah.
It all lights up. These people freak out. They end up killing themselves.
It's so
each other.
good.
I know. It's
Such a crazy
great.
story.
It
But
is.
I just love the weakness. I just love God using people with issues. And I feel like what I'm seeing with this angel talking to him is maybe something, if we're dealing with people who struggle with an ability, is almost ignore the whining and just keep speaking strength and power to them. Because a lot of times I feel like one of our weaknesses is we dwell in our weaknesses.
Yeah.
And it amplifies them. But it's like, oh man, if we just keep speaking strength, I feel like there is a tiny bit of strength in everybody that can be a seed that can grow into something.
Okay, final thought for each of you.
Okay.
What is God speaking to you in your control issue?
For me, probably delegate. That's like
I
as
was
far
going to
as
say, listen to your boss more.
yeah. Find people to do everything I want to do. I just like I feel like we had talked about that before. Of just like I have that tendency to just be like, oh, I'll just do it myself, and oftentimes, and yet at the same time, this is the truth about me. I suck at doing everything myself. Like I'm terrible by myself. And yet that's the broken piece. And yet I'm the default by myself person.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's good. I think for me, it would just be one, I had mentioned this earlier, but just recognizing that the lie that I'm telling myself is that God is not for me and I could do it better if I just keep controlling their situation. But then even in like the weakness and strength conversation of just recognizing like, I'm pretty strong, but God is clearly significantly stronger. So in the times of like fear, anxiety, and worry, I could go at it on my own and I could just like keep pressing through. But my strength is going to be significantly less if I'm doing it by myself than if I'm giving it to God in that moment. And so I think that's like, yeah, they're both they're both good and definitely continuing to work on.
What about you?
What about you, Jack?
I
Yeah,
would
give it to
say
us.
that for me, it's to trust the author, trust the storyteller.
Right.
Like he's writing my story, and he's writing it in a way that's better than I know, and that I can trust him. Because what I want is everything to go in my favor all the time.
Right.
And sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. But
Right.
I know, looking over the course of my life, that what God has given me is amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so I was in my bathroom, and I was seated. And I don't want to really talk about it, but
What are you doing?
'cause
seated
I
in
know,
your
right?
Okay.
I know.
Maybe we should have
There's
stopped
only
the
one.
podcast.
There's only one seat in your bathroom. You do the math. But I'm looking out into my closet, and out in my closet, there's this. My wife has organized all of our memorabilia,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
And it's all on the top of our closet. And there was almost none for me. Like she has all these pictures and all these things that her parents saved of her growing up, and there's almost none of me.
Wow.
Because that wasn't my family.
Right.
And yet I married this person, and now we have all of this great memorabilia on all of our children, and we have
Right.
it all saved. God knows, and he wrote the story, even though I
Right.
don't deserve it. And I didn't have the strength, or certainly didn't have the ability to choose wisely enough to pick the right wife.
Right.
But that the storyteller's writing my story, and it's the one thing I wanted when I followed him was I wanted this family that
Right.
really
Right.
loved God and loved me, and we could
No,
be
that's awesome.
together. My son turned 20. Is turning 27 today,
Hmm.
and just to me, this is. I look at my life and I go, "This is what you get when you hang in there long enough." Because my kids
Yeah.
are back, and
Yeah.
we love each other, and it's he knows, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
It's
good.
good. All right.
And for future reference, you could just say you looked in your closet. You didn't have to say where you were sitting. Just
That just
something to
But
think
I
about.
wouldn't.
That is
For the
Like
future.
how? Like
That
the
is
door's
the-
there. This is just no.
But nobody knows
that
your
is the
house.
statement from the voice of all women. Like if there was ever a statement that all
Right.
women wanted to say, that was it.
Oh, dear.
Oh, I'd be in such trouble if my wife listened to this.
That's so good. All right. Is
All right,
that it?
send us an email. Tell us who you think has the biggest control issues.
Right. And if you have any wisdom,
Yeah.
send it away.
All right.
We need it. We'll see you guys next time.
Okay. Bye.
See ya. Thanks for joining us for these last 10 steps. You can find the show notes for this podcast on our website, 10stepsfurther.com. If you'd like to join us for another journey, or if you know someone else who's on this walk, subscribe to our podcast at 10 Steps Further on iTunes, or simply search 10 Steps Further on your podcast app. If you'd like to be part of the conversation with a question or a comment or a criticism or even a wisecrack, join our Facebook group by simply searching 10 Steps Further. And if you're ever in San Diego, come visit us at Canyon Springs Church. We'd love to meet you.